Alright, this is the last part of Lecture 1, and it's the part that separates coding concurrency from choosing architecture. Up to now, we've been thinking in a very local way. Add threads, tune the pool, measure P95. That's useful, but it's not the full story. Real systems don't start by asking how many threads, they start by asking what concurrency model fits the workload. Today I'll show you 4 short case studies. Each one is a different mindset, an event loop like Redis, shared state with locks, queue growth explained by Little's law, read-write contention like SQLite. My goal is simple. After this, you'll stop thinking single-threaded is bad. You'll start thinking single-threaded can be a deliberate engineering choice with a specific failure mode. Let's go. If your only tool is threads, every problem looks like add threads. That's how you build systems that are fast until they fall apart. Instead, we move to a higher level question. What model should I use? And the 4 models here each teach a different lesson. Event loop, simplicity and predictability when work is tiny. Locks, correctness, costs, performance, and scaling stops. Little's law, queues are not bugs, they are math. Read-write contention, sometimes controlled serialization beats chaotic parallelism. So don't treat these as 4 random programs. Treat them as 4 personalities of systems. Redis is the perfect example of a system that looks too simple, and yet it's extremely fast. The idea is brutal. One thread handles requests, one by one, no worker pool. Why does that work? Because each request is tiny, in memory operations, simple parsing, minimal blocking, and because it's one thread, no shared state races inside request handling, no locks, and excellent cache locality. So the punchline is, single-threaded isn't slow, single-threaded is predictable, as long as per request work stays small. Here's the core loop. Notice what's missing. There is no lock, no synchronization, no complicated concurrency control. We poll a queue, take a request, do tiny work, respond. The performance story is not magic speed. It's reduced overhead, but here's the important engineering truth. This model doesn't fail by races or deadlocks. It fails by queue growth. Once arrival rate exceeds what one thread can drain, latency explodes because waiting time grows, and that's exactly what Little's law will explain. When students run this, I want them to look for one thing, stability. At reasonable loads, throughput is high, latency is steady, tail latency stays under control. Then when you overload it, the failure mode is clean, the queue grows. So you learn something practical. Event loops don't break in weird ways. They break in a mathematically predictable way, backlog. Now we flip the story. This program is deliberately designed to kill the naive belief, more threads always helps. Here we have many threads, but one shared counter. To be correct, we must protect it, so we add a lock, and instantly the parallel program becomes partially serialized. Every thread must pass through the same doorway. This becomes your first real experience of the cost of correctness. Correctness is non-negotiable, but it isn't free. This is the entire drama, counter plus plus inside a lock, one line of code, but it forces ordering. All the threads line up here, so when you increase threads, you increase contention, context switching, and time wasted waiting for the lock. This is why many real systems try to avoid shared mutable state, not because it's philosophically bad, because it kills scaling. What you run with 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 threads, you'll see a pattern. It improves a bit, then it flattens, and can even get worse. That curve is the lesson, and it teaches the engineering insight. Your bottleneck is not CPU, it's coordination. In the real world, this is why we use things like sharding, actor models, message passing, or lock-free designs, to avoid putting all threads in one line. Now I give you the most important equation in performance engineering, L equals L times WY. This isn't theory for exams, it's the reason your system melts down. If arrivals increase, or if service time increases, then the number of in-flight requests grows. That growth is not optional. It's not a bug, it's mathematics. This is why queues form even in systems with no code problem. You can have perfect code and still have an exploding queue. When students run this program, I want them to do one controlled experiment. Increase arrival rate, just increase it, rerun, and observe the remaining queue. And then I want them to say out loud, if lambda exceeds capacity, backlog must grow. That sentence is a professional level milestone because it means you stop blaming the code for everything. Sometimes you're just violating system capacity. If you build a single-thread event loop, you're accepting a contract. Per request work must stay tiny because if you introduce blocking I/O inside the loop, you inflate W. And when W inflates, L inflates. And when L inflates, latency explodes. So Redis's design is not primitive, it's disciplined. It's saying, we choose predictability and we avoid blocking. This is a beautiful model because it's honest. Many readers can proceed together, but writes must be exclusive. Why? Because writes change shared state. Consistency requires ordering. So the system chooses controlled serialization for writes, and that creates a failure mode that feels spiky. Everything is smooth until a writer shows up and suddenly readers block. This model is common in real systems, caches, metadata stores, configuration systems, because most workloads are read heavy. Here's the pattern. RAID lock, many can enter. Write lock, only one, and it blocks everybody else. This becomes a teaching moment. When you introduce writers, you introduce a global coordination point. So again, scaling is not just hardware. Scaling is also coordination strategy. When you run this program, the best in-class tweak is increase writer threads. As you increase writers, latency spikes become more frequent. Throughput becomes noisy. The system becomes less predictable. That's not because Java is slow, that's because the model is expressing a real constraint. Writes serialize. And SQLite does this intentionally because it prefers correctness and predictability over chaotic concurrency. This slide is the point of the whole case study. Event loop, simple, predictable, fast for tiny tasks, fails by queue growth, lock-heavy shared state. Correct, but scaling is limited, and tail latency grows. So here's the statement I want you to remember. Engineering is trade-offs. Single-threaded is a choice, not a limitation. Bad engineers choose models by ego. Good engineers choose models by workload. These questions are not busy work. They are designed to force you to reason like an engineer, especially question 4. If W doubles and lambda stays constant, what happens to L? It doubles. Instantly, that's a mathematical reason for queue growth, not an implementation detail. And the SQLite question, why serialize writes? Because some problems can't be parallelized without breaking correctness. These questions are how I check that you've shifted from thread thinking to architecture thinking. And this is the bridge to the next lecture. Event-driven I/O and async architectures exist because threads don't scale infinitely. We want to handle massive weighting without massive thread pools. So next time, we'll move from threads versus locks to event-driven designs. You now have the vocabulary to understand why that shift happened historically. Let's close lecture 1 with the real takeaway. Concurrency is not one thing. It's a set of models, each with its own strengths and failure modes. Thread pools hide waiting until overhead and saturation. Event loops remove locking overhead until queues grow. Locks enforce correctness, but they create contention. Read-write separation makes reads fast, but writes cause spikes. If you remember one sentence, remember this. Every concurrency model chooses what kind of pain you want. Good engineers don't eliminate pain. They choose a pain they can predict, measure, and control. Next lecture, we go deeper into event-driven I/O and async, and you'll see how modern servers avoid thread explosion while still handling massive concurrency. That's the end of lecture 1.